I think the intentions of the people who, and GSOW, the Guerrilla Skeptics on Wikipedia, I think they're trying to basically improve Wikipedia from their perspective, which of course is their position of a scientific skeptic. So they find articles on Wikipedia that aren't very good, usually about some kind of fringe thing like pseudoscience. Very little bit of what they do is UFOs. It's less than 5% of their edits, of even the articles that they worked on, is UFOs. And they try to improve these articles. And it's stuff like articles on mediums, like spirit readings and stuff like that, and supernatural stuff, or like snake oil, quackery, fake medicine, various other things. And they try to use reputable, reliable sources with citations and follow the Wikipedia style guides and remove unsourced material and add material that's got like good, reliable sources.
Welcome back. I'm here again with Mick West. Mick, welcome back, my friend.
Glad to be back.
Okay, I think at the end of the last episode, and we're going to go there, even though I'm not. It would take an immense amount of energy to convince me that the flat Earth hypothesis, that the Earth is indeed flat. But let's just cover that really quickly. What's the contention? What's the strongest argument that you've seen leveled for that hypothesis?
Well, yeah, the Earth is flat because it looks flat. Have you ever been to Kansas? Really, really flat. You can't see any curve at all. So that's basically the gist of the argument, is that the Earth appears to be flat. There's more arguments that, kind of a religious basis, like God describes the Earth as being flat. But when you talk to people in terms of like, what's the evidence for the Earth being flat, it kind of boils down to, I think it's flat and it looks flat. And then they start getting into weird bits of science. They'll do various experiments. They'll look at something that's very far away and they think, I shouldn't be able to see this if the Earth is curved, but I can still see it. Therefore, the Earth is flat. Like there's a mountain near Los Angeles that you can see from Point Doom, which is a kind of a little headland of the coast. And they think that you shouldn't be able to see this particular mountain. But the thing is, that mountain, if the Earth was flat, would actually look a lot bigger. And the fact that all you can see is the little tippy top of this mountain actually proves that the Earth is round. But of course, they ignore that. Then they'll do things like they'll shine a laser over a lake. They'll find a lake that's about, say, 10 miles across. They'll set up a laser on one side of the lake, about 1 foot above the surface of the lake. Now, over 10 miles, there's going to be like an 8-foot kind of rise obstruction in the middle of the lake because of the curve of the Earth. The surface of any water surface is actually, they call it level, but level actually means curved on the Earth. And so they'll shine a laser from one side of the lake to the other, and you think, well, if the Earth is curved, you wouldn't be able to see this laser on the other side. But what happens is you can see the laser on the other side.
It's through the water.
No, it's not. It's not going through the water. It's what's happening is it's atmospheric refraction. Now
okay, but it is an element of refraction, just not.
It is refraction, yeah. So what happens is the surface of the lake itself is cool, so that cools down the water directly above it. So you get this little temperature gradient, and colder air is more dense. Light bends towards cold air, so you shoot a laser over the lake. It just curves just enough, and it spreads out a lot, so there's lots of room for error that you can generally see it on the other side of a lake, and people take this as being proof. And then I have to try to explain to them what's actually going on. And I've done quite a lot of work on doing that. I actually built a simulator to show the light paths and the effects of various temperature gradients and stuff like that. It's kind of fun science stuff to do. I always say that teachers should teach flat Earth in school because it's a good science experiment to try to test these claims and see if they have any validity. But yeah, there's lots of pseudoscience involved in flat Earth. But the people who do it are very, very convinced that they are right, which I think tends to make them gravitate towards a certain set of expectations. They have these preconceived biases about what they think is going to happen. And so no matter what happens, they will interpret what they see as being proof of the flat Earth.
To advertise on Through Glass Darkly, email throughglassdarkly@gmail.com.
So when a ship goes over the horizon, How do they explain that? Like,
They use perspective, which there has been mockingly referred to as flurspective, like flat Earth perspective. And they say that it's to do with the angular size of things, that you can't see things when they get so small that the angular size is too small for the eye to see. But of course, it doesn't make any sense at all, because you can still see the top of the boat. You just can't see the bottom of the boat, which is hidden behind the horizon. But they, for some reason, the fact that they have this explanation, oh, it's just perspective, they just say it without understanding anything about what they're actually talking about. And they say it as if it somehow explains something. But of course, the top half of the boat would have exactly the same perspective as the bottom half of the boat. There's no reason why the top half doesn't disappear as well.
Right, it should just be the whole thing in a flat.
It would just get smaller and disappear.
Yeah,
it doesn't get smaller from the bottom up, but they think it does. And they think that's how perspective works, that things get smaller from the bottom up and they get hidden behind perspective. Obviously, it makes no sense whatsoever, but it's really weird that they have this strong belief that this is what's actually going on. Like, another thing is they try to explain gravity, because gravity is a bit of a problem on the flat Earth, because how does gravity work? Gravity works on a globe. Everything goes towards the center of mass. So if you're standing up here, that down is towards the surface. And you're in Australia, down is that way. But from a flat Earth perspective, they think down must always be straight down, like towards whatever down virtually is in their idea. And gravity wouldn't work, because if the Earth was flat and you had gravity, it would be different in different locations. If you're close to the center of the disk, it would be one thing. If you're at the edge of the disk, you would be leaning over, but then it wouldn't be flat. It would have to be curved, and then you're back to a ball. So they try to say that there is no such thing as gravity. It's all to do with density. And it's all to do, like, how things float in the ocean. That's why things go down. But it also makes no sense, because things only float like that because of gravity. So there's this weird set of circular arguments that basically say the Earth is flat, therefore this argument means that the Earth is flat. And it's very difficult to kind of talk to people in that mindset, particularly because they think that like if you're someone who's arguing against them, they think that you are part of, either you're a disinformation agent, especially if you're good at arguing, they think you're a disinformation agent, or they think that you have been brainwashed. You've been brought up since a small child to believe in the globe, and so you're a globe head, so you don't understand their argument. It's not them not understanding you, it's you not understanding them.
How big is this community?
It's not very big. And most of the people involved in it, I think, aren't really that deeply committed to it. So, I mean, I'd probably just a few hundred, if, maybe 1,000 or so of people who are really into it, who promote it online. There's a bunch of people who basically do it as a trolling exercise, that they're just, you go into like flat Earth discussion groups, someone will post something that's just ludicrous, like the moon is made of rock, so how can it reflect light? And then a lot of people will go, oh, you're such an idiot. And then they'll start explaining to why the Earth can maintain light. But it's just people trolling. It's just people like having fun with the arguments. There are a few people who genuinely believe it. But, you talk to them and their understanding of what's actually going on is usually very limited and skewed. And at some point you can kind of figure out what their mistake is, but it's impossible to explain their mistake to them. I was at a Flat Earth conference a few years ago, and I was trying to explain to someone why something wouldn't disappear from the bottom up. And I was putting a piece of paper over on the other side of the conference hall and saying, look over here, you can still see the whole thing. Like, there's no reason why it would go behind the floor. Your line of sight is never obscured by the floor. And I was trying to explain all of this, and they were, no, but it's still like perspective. I think perspective would make it disappear if it was far enough away. Very difficult to talk to people who have a fixed false belief.
Interesting. Yeah. And look, I think it's important to talk about these things, because no one is immune to some of these, cognitive biases and things like that. So what sort of cognitive biases, just for whatever topic, have you had to work through? Or where can people go wrong in terms of?
Well, pretty much any of the biases, but I think maybe a big one is priming. Like, people and that kind of ties in with confirmation bias. Like, priming is where you're primed to see a certain thing. Like, if you buy a new car, you start seeing that same car everywhere. Or if you're like, you're thinking about Teslas, you start seeing Teslas.
When the United States and China clash, the world will never be the same, especially when forces beyond reality threaten to intervene. What if the United States went to war with the People's Republic of China? How would these rivals fight for supremacy on land, sea, air, and across the stochastic streams of time? What wonder weapons would be unleashed? What horrors would emerge from the irradiated sludge of the South China Sea? What heroes would rise and forever change the course of history? Tread into the deepest and darkest dimensions of the multiverse, gaze through a kaleidoscope of fractured realities, and bear witness to the disturbing visions of World War III from today's greatest minds in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Weird World War, China. Available now from Baen Books at baen.com.
And confirmation bias is a bias where you seek out, perhaps subconsciously, information that confirms what you already believe, and you kind of ignore or you don't go after or you reject information, put less weight on that information if it disconfirms it, if it proves you wrong. So you start just taking in information, but anything that disconfirms you goes out, anything that confirms it goes in. And so all you get is just like, oh yeah, it must be true. There's all this stuff that confirms it, because you're misunderstanding what's actually going on. Yeah, and then framing bias is a similar thing. It's where you kind of frame the situation in a way that tends to support your conclusion. So you structure your arguments and your discussions in a way that you only kind of include certain information, or you look at it in a certain way that does that. You mentioned anchoring biases earlier, and that's where you where you start off greatly influences where you end up. Like if you, I see this a lot in conspiracy theories, like say 9/11 conspiracy theory. People's introduction to something is something like they watch a compelling video, like Loose Change or something like that, one of the older videos that tells you about that 9/11 from a conspiracy perspective. And since you've never been exposed to anything before, that's your first exposure to this theory. And it's super compelling because they make these videos so they're very convincing. And so once you've got that, that's like your basis. That becomes the basis upon which you view other things. And of course, it's primed you, and it's the anchoring bias as well. And there's various other ones as well, but they're all kind of like a similar type of thing, in that it's your perception is tending to favor a certain conclusion.
Now, what about cognitive dissonance? So as an example, there's one thing or one technique that salespeople will use. I think it's called the 4 walls technique, right? So they'll come to your house and, say, Mick, are you having a good day today? And you say, yeah, I'm having a good day. It's kind of cold outside today, isn't it? And you say, hey, yeah, it is kind of cold outside. And you say, it sure would be pretty good to have like a nice fleece to help you out, wouldn't it? And you say, yeah, sure would. And then they say, well, it just so happens I'm selling fleeces and I can give you the one off my back, or I got a bunch in my car. Would you like to buy? And a lot of people, because it's kind of a bit of a consistency bias, right? They said yes for the first 3 things. So it's just increasingly difficult for you to say no for the 4th question.
Yeah. Well, part of that is just being polite as well. It's like they trick you into things where you can't disagree with a person if you just disagree with them, if you agree with them 3 times in a row.
Are you familiar with the 5-factor personality test? Are you familiar with this?
I've heard of various personality tests. I'm not sure about that one.
This is the only one that's statistically significant. So if you score certain, but anyway, you're to your point, you were talking about it's hard for people to disagree. Well, one of the 5 factors is agreeableness.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's something like the 5 factors, as I recall, like agreeableness. That reminds me that they do correlations with various things like that, personality factors like agreeableness, and people who believe in conspiracy theories. And I guess people who tend to agree with other people, they're going to believe these conspiracy theories because, and you see this type of thing in the online communities, especially the slightly more esoteric places that you go to. Like if you go to a Facebook group that's about, say, I don't know, like abductions or something like that, or spiritual connections with aliens, you don't find disagreement within those groups. You get people who are very much supportive of each other. but to the extent that no matter what you say is taken as valid. And this is something that it's not just in these groups as well. You see it in some UFO researchers, like Jacques Vallée is a prime example. Jacques Vallée is very agreeable.
By the way, we're not going to talk about this, but I'm just going to throw it out there. We're also seeing much of this in mainstream society right now. But I'll just leave it at that. And
yeah, I would agree. Yeah. No, I know what you're saying, but yeah, Jacques Vallée has interviewed thousands of people who have had some kind of UFO or abduction experience, and he basically believes all of them are genuine, and that's exactly what they perceived. And he's very protective of the people. Like, I asked him once about somebody, and he was very reluctant to give any information about this particular person. And I think that leads to perhaps forming the wrong conclusions. If you're always believing somebody, perhaps that person made a mistake. Perhaps that person didn't actually have this experience. Perhaps it was just a dream. And if you always believe that it actually really happened, or that it was really something that made it seem like it happened, that had some kind of significance, you just end up looking for it everywhere. And I think Jacques Vallée has been down that rabbit hole for so long, he can't even see that he's down a rabbit hole. And he just basically takes everything as being evidence of some kind of weird interdimensional trickster or whatever it is that his theory states. And this self-reinforcing thing is a big issue within any kind of community, but certainly within like the UFO community, where if you try to explain somebody's sighting, you often quite get angrily rebutted by people who are mad that you might be trying to put some kind of mundane explanation on something that they see as being deeply personal and spiritual. And even if it's with somebody else, you still get the same reaction because it's by association. They feel like they're being attacked. So it's kind of a bit of a challenge in communication and in investigation to try to get over that issue.
Well, actually, you raised an important point. I'm not going to say too much about it, and this is in every kind of endeavor. This isn't just in UFOs or whatever, but again, a thing that humans do is this guilt by association nonsense, right? Where there might be, again, for subscribers who are watching this that don't agree with Mick West, it's not the point. The point is we're trying to get to the truth, and you should be talking to as many people as possible, particularly people who can combat your confirmation bias, right? So, and it also helps, and I think I mentioned in the first episode about grounding, right? You want to try to remain grounded. You want to you utilize whatever data you have. So one thing I wanted to ask you, and this is going to maybe come completely out of left field, but we talked a little bit about AI in the last episode, and there's this huge dichotomy between kind of mainstream media news sources from 1947 all the way up into the current day, maybe until 2017 when you had the Tic Tac videos, et cetera, or I don't know if it was 2018, 2017 with Glowing Aura's article in the New York Times. But up until about that point, if you look at, there are databases available of local news reports, and there is a huge reservoir of encounter accounts, particularly UFO sightings and things like that. They tend to be highly correlated around nuclear facilities, which is not where you would be flying test craft. But it is easy to form a narrative that there was kind of an official blacklisting at the national level, but at the local level, it was just, at that time, it was much harder for a local report to be syndicated. So all I'm saying is AI is going to allow people to examine these reports in a little bit better area, and not necessarily that they would be real, right? You have to assume a bunch of them are hoaxes, a bunch of them are, they're seeing something else, but there should be certain details about these reports that are highly correlated and specific that you might be able to shine some light on.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, with AI, I think like data mining is something that's a big thing. Like, can you actually discern any signal from all the noise? I think with the local reports, it might be more that just these are local stories, and they didn't make the mainstream national news because they weren't that significant. A person sees a light in the sky. It's kind of a fun story for a local paper to put out, but it's not really something that's going to make the New York Times.
Oh, they're stranger than that. I mean, they're like Counters of the Third Kind, things like that.
Right. But then again, you're faced with the issue of the mainstream media, versus local media has kind of different journalistic standards, I think, like in terms of demonstrating whether something is true or not. If someone, I still read stories all the time now in local media, which do not get up to the mainstream media, except like in the British tabloids like the Daily Star and things like that.
To be fair, and I'm not pushing against you, but one could argue that the mainstream media doesn't have many standards either. Not on this topic, but
it varies.
Many other things.
It varies. Yeah. No, definitely. Like, it's different though. You see these very small things, like the Beaconsfield Gazette or something like that, like a tiny little local story. I just made that up. It's probably not a real thing. And local man has encounter is like news. Like, where else are they going to write about? Like, person ran a stop sign. Yeah, it's perhaps just the fact that local news doesn't have a lot to write about, and then the mainstream news has the big stories to write about. But I don't know. It's we'd have to go into the nitty gritty of the individual cases, and we don't really have time for that.
Correct. But I think it would be interesting to see if there were any.
Yeah, it would be great.
It's like another topic.
I think it'll happen. I think there will be like AI analyses of the entirety of the newspapers. Surfaces interesting things.
It's already. I know for a fact. It's already being done.
Yeah, I'm sure people are working on stuff like that for a variety of reasons. But when someone chooses to do it for UFOs, it could be interesting.
The other thing that would be interesting about it would be if you correlate it with nuclear facilities and sites. And
yeah, I'm a bit dubious about that correlation. I think a lot of that is observation bias. Is that nuclear facilities tend to have people with lots of cameras and security and stuff like that, and so it's It's a difficult one to actually demonstrate that there's a real correlation there.
I'm sure you're following this group that heavily edits Wikipedia.
Guerrilla Skeptics on Wikipedia.
Yeah, it's called the Real Skeptics.
Guerrilla. Guerrilla, as in guerrilla fighters, underground.
First, just to get started, for folks that don't know, there's a group called the Guerrilla Skeptics. It's run by a woman. I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to kind of verge into kind of libel land. But
you can say her name. I mean, she won't mind. Susan.
Yeah.
Let's call her Susan.
What do you make of this effort in terms of? Do you think it's a force for good? Do you think it's a bad thing? Do you think it's kind of neutral?
I think it's trying to be a force for good. I think the intentions of the people who, and GSOW, the Guerrilla Skeptics on Wikipedia, I think they're trying to basically improve Wikipedia from their perspective, which of course is their position of a scientific skeptic. So they find articles on Wikipedia that aren't very good, usually about some kind of fringe thing like pseudoscience. Very little bit of what they do is UFOs. It's less than 5% of their edits of even the articles that they worked on is UFOs. And they try to improve these articles. And it's stuff like articles on mediums, like spirit readings and stuff like that, and supernatural stuff, or like snake oil, quackery, fake medicine, various other things. And they try to use reputable, reliable sources with citations and follow the Wikipedia style guides and remove unsourced material and add material that's got like good, reliable sources. So that's what they're trying to do. And that's what they say they are doing. And I think to a large extent, they succeed in that. I think, because they're just made up of individual people who are interested in various topics with various levels of expertise in various things, I'm sure they make mistakes. I'm sure they sometimes make edits that aren't perfect. But most of what they do, I would support. I'm not a member of it. I know Susan, the leader. I've met her a few times at conferences. We're both members of the Skeptical Inquiry. It's not really that we're members. It's like we've got awarded. We both have this same plaque here. It's the CSI, the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. We're both fellows of that, which they give to people who think do good skeptical work. But that doesn't mean we're part of the same organization or anything. So I'm not a member of Guerrilla Skeptics on Wikipedia. I'm not Lucky Louie, which is one of the editors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are
yeah.
you or have you ever been Lucky
I
Louie?
don't even know who Lucky Louie is, and I don't think anybody does. He's some anonymous old guy who edits a whole bunch of random pages. Or he's interested in like ham radio and stuff like that, which I'm not interested in. He does a lot of supernatural stuff. I'm not really interested in the supernatural so much anymore. But yeah, I don't know who he is. But I support what they're trying to do, but I recognize that they're not going to do everything perfectly.
Yeah, I think some of the behavior that I've seen has been.
Well, I think a lot of the stuff that was presented by the guys, Rob Heatherly and Matt Ford had this 5-hour discussion on the topic, literally 5 hours, and they put in a bunch of examples. But a lot of that stuff was kind of misunderstanding of the actual guidelines of Wikipedia. Like, for example, like removing Lou Elizondo's birthplace. Like someone corrected it from Florida to Texas, and I think he was actually born in Texas, but it says Florida in Wikipedia because the only place on the internet that lists where he was born is some article where he was interviewed where it says he was born in Miami. And so Wikipedia is just reflecting what reliable sources say. And unfortunately, individuals can't go in and correct that page. They can go in and they can say on the top page, this is wrong. How do we fix it? And then you can figure out how to fix it. It's like he needs to actually get his place of birth into a reliable source. Because if you have like a reliable source that's saying one thing and you come in and you say another thing, you can't really have this free-for-all where everybody can edit their own pages and say things about themselves when there's other sources saying different things. Sure, you'd expect that individual to be correct, but then what if they're not?
I think one of the more egregious examples was there was, I think, with Ross Coulthart, there was an incident where he broke up a fight, and then the Wikipedia article was written to make it seem as if he
I saw that
left because of the fight, right?
I saw that, and the thing about that is also a kind of an unfortunate thing. Like, it cites a article, and the headline of the article is basically what is said in Wikipedia, and like the very first part of the article. You can go to it, if you go to Wikipedia and you look for the fight thing and click on the number next to it, takes you down to the references, and click on the reference, read the article. The start of that article is basically exactly the same as is in Wikipedia. However, the article does go on to say that, it says like Ross Coulthart leaves after being involved in a brawl. That's what it says at the start of the article. Then in the body of the article, it actually says that he broke up the fight and he left after it. And so that's something where I think, they probably should edit that to change it. It is misleading, but the article itself is misleading. And, if you just click on the link, it seems to support it. So it's a bit of a problem, I think.
It's not just bad editing on kind of the Guerrilla Skeptics part. They
didn't make stuff up. They're
bad journalism,
almost quoting the article verbatim.
Sloppy editing. Right.
Yeah, so they have a reliable source that says exactly what they are saying. They put it in Wikipedia, but it really, I think, doesn't reflect the whole story. That it was just him breaking up a fight rather than being, technically it was. He was involved in a brawl and he left. But the actual nuances of the story are certainly missing in the snippet that Wikipedia reports. But they are actually putting what's in the article.
The other thing that I saw that was also particularly egregious was there were folks who had earned their PhDs, and there was there could be some Wikipedia.
There is. It's not a technical reason. It's a style guide, and it's actually a common style guide throughout academia. Is that when you have a list of references or a list of people that say are involved in something, you don't put like PhD next to them. It's just a standard thing, and you see it in all these different style guides, like the AP style guide.
Their names, right? You put doctor in front of their names.
No, you put it if people are commonly known, like Dr. Phil, then you perhaps put it. But if it's just a list of people, you generally just put their names as a reference. And so what was happening there, they were conforming just that section to match Wikipedia style guides, which seems bad because, it's like Travis Taylor PhD becomes Travis Taylor, or Dr. Travis Taylor PhD just becomes Travis Taylor. But fortunately, that's just the way it is. And any other article that has a similar list of people is going to be formatted the same way. But you can see people coming into Wikipedia not knowing that these are the rules. I mean, they're not exactly rules because they're more like guidelines, but they're pretty solid guidelines. because, all these different people are editing. Sometimes like not all articles are going to be the same. But yeah, when you come in and you see that someone just removes PhD from Travis Taylor's name, it's like, it sounds bad, but it's not. They're just trying to fix the article to conform to guidelines.
Now, what do you make, again, this is an ad hominem comment, and I'm, calling it out so that people can, not on you, but this is an ad hominem argument. So what do you make of someone who, for their entire professional career, was a baby photographer at JCPenney, coming in and editing scientific articles?
It's fine, because anyone can do it. You don't edit an article based on your own personal experience, and you're very much not supposed to do that. You're supposed to use reliable sources. So Susan, who you're referring to, she was a photographer at JCPenney.
And also, I'm acknowledging that's an ad hominem argument.
She retired like 20 years ago.
Right.
So it's not really relevant. I mean, she knows a lot about photography, but she's very interested in editing Wikipedia. So she's very familiar with the guidelines of Wikipedia and how an article should look and what makes a good article. And she's had a lot of interaction with the other editors, not the GSOW editors, but the actual other people who edit Wikipedia, who are completely independently. She's been doing it for a long time. So she's very good at editing Wikipedia, which means she knows how to make a good article, even if she doesn't know that much about the subject. Because what you're doing is you're reflecting not like the science of a subject, but you're reflecting how
sources out there.
That is how it's portrayed in other sources, in reliable sources. So if you can cite like the New York Times, or you can cite something in Nature, or you cite something in the Journal of UFO Studies or whatever, then you can make the article, and you know how it's supposed to be worded and how it works. So I think she's got a lot of experience in editing Wikipedia, which is what you need to edit Wikipedia.
Okay. I think we should have satisfied folks who, saw the video. And
yeah, I don't know.
Just to hear, I mean, you have to hear both sides of the argument, right? So your argument, to kind of unfairly narrow it down or simplify it, is that Wikipedia has a standards guide and requires verifiable sources for every comment that you put in there. And what we're seeing is the end result of, granted, there are people with a particular skew. We can acknowledge that, right? They're coming at it from a certain direction. But between those two items, or that's what's causing a lot of the angst.
I agree. I think that there is also some bias here. The skeptical people have a bias towards...
Well, that's what I mean by skew.
Yeah, there's a bit of a skew there. I would agree. Like, skeptics tend to view ufology as entirely pseudoscience, and I think that maybe comes across in some of the edits, and it could be improved. But there's lots of other editors on Wikipedia who are independent. They're not like GSOW people, they're not skeptics, they're not UFO believers, and so they get involved as well. And other people can go and edit it too. You could go edit it right now. It's difficult at first because you generally start like making mistakes, and then your edits get removed, and it's very frustrating. Partly the reason I didn't really like editing back then. But if you understand the rules, then you can make changes. And the best way to do it really is to go to the talk page. Each article, if you look at the tabs at the top on the desktop thing, you can go to the talk page, and then there's these discussions. Unfortunately, it's a bit fiddly to do. They have these weird formatting things and these little codes. You have about 4 tildes for your name and stuff like that. But, you get used to that, get used to how to discuss things with people who are editing on Wikipedia. That's the best way to actually get constructive change to an article, rather than just barging in there and saying, oh, well, he was born in Texas, I'm going to write that. You've got to actually you got to work with the program.
Now, what do you make of I think we have a few minutes left, but what do you make of the Rush allegations in the House Oversight Committee, July of 2023?
Yeah, I think there's various layers to the allegations that he's made. And I think we don't know what is being taken seriously and to what degree. We know that the ICIG said his complaint was serious and credible, urgent and credible, I think was the word. But, what does that refer to? Is that just is it the reprisals? Is it that something was being illegally withheld from Congress? Is it that there's a secret program that has funding illegally? Is it that we have a secret program that is secretly reverse engineering foreign technology and giving it to corporations? Or is it that we have a secret program that's secretly reverse engineering alien technology and giving it to corporations? There's various levels at which you can look at his accusations and say, some of this could be true. And, the idea that there's a secret program that's being withheld from Congress doesn't seem super surprising. I'm sure you're not surprised by that idea.
No.
And that's the type of thing that would be an urgent and credible claim. And it may well be true that there is a secret program that's being withheld from Congress. Like, I don't know, Iran-Contra was a secret program that was withheld from Congress. The various other things. The Church Commission unveiled a whole bunch of things back in, I think that was the 70s. CIA's involvement in media and things like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's something going on, but I'd be very surprised if it was aliens or non-human intelligence.
Yeah, look, that's why I'm talking to you. I have no idea, right? Like I can come up with 5 carefully argued plausible theories, right? And one would come out with the theory that you might come up with, and another one might be, an extreme paranoid fantasy that sounds real, right? But that's what's so frustrating about a lot of this business is there's so much, there's lots of hoaxes. There's a lot of people who think they see something, but they didn't really see anything. There's stuff that's real. There's also misinformation, disinformation by governments, foreign intelligence services. So it's hard to kind of make heads or tails of some of this stuff. One thing that I did want to compliment you on, I didn't even look into it because I've lived out in the desert, for 5 years when I was in the military. And, I've seen like flying trash bags, because of so when I first saw the jellyfish video, I didn't even look into it. I'm like, it looks like a flying trash bag. But I watched your analysis on it and I thought, that's a pretty good explanation for it. But I almost feel like that was seeded to somebody to discredit them by someone in the intelligence community. That's what it feels like.
I mean, people have said that, it's obviously Jeremy Corbell, and he's had a whole bunch of things like this where he's released things and they've turned out to be crap, basically. The Green Triangle, the 29 Palms flares.
Oh, yeah, you and I have a disagreement on that, but I think that's
which one? The 29 Palms?
The triangle. Yeah, I don't think it's NHI, but I think, to me, that looked like a semi-rigid ISR platform, right? That, kind of just floats,
well, we could get into that in a different time, maybe, but
there's
a lot of details.
Again, I used flares routinely, and that's not how flares behave. Now, I know you have a picture of the video where you've flipped it, superimposed it.
Mm-hmm.
The one level down that I would love to see, if you ever get back to it, is if you're able to overlay the videos, because the flares that Greenwald showed looked like flares to me, right? Because they had the smoke, but I think what you did is you freeze framed it and then you superimposed it. I'd like to see the video because flares don't stay that.
Yeah, no, you see them.
I mean, they're
descend.
like a pendulum.
I would encourage you to revisit it and look at it from the perspective of it being flares, because you can actually see the smoke trails in the photos that Jeremy posted once you realize what you're looking at. And it's the match between the two things is pretty much undeniable. And we've geolocated
as a snapshot, sure.
Right, but we've geolocated the things, the positions of the cameras, and they all kind of congregate in the same position, and the fall rate of the things matches exactly. We timed the photograph. We actually the camera's clock was off, and we were able to determine that by using 3 planes that you can see in this one image, 3 little tracks. We downloaded the ADS-B tracks, put the camera where it's supposed to be, and then adjusted the start time. So we got the exact time of these videos, so we could tell what the time offset was of the camera, which matched exactly with the times that were in the other videos. And we got one extra video from somebody else who was there, so we've got a precise timestamp from the iPhone of exactly when that was. And so it all matches. It does all match. And you may have some objections, but I'm pretty confident that we could actually work through them if we have the time in the future.
Yeah, we're actually pretty much there.
It's not today.
Hopefully quick questions. The first question is, what evidence would you need to see to say, okay, this whole NHI thing is real?
Well, I need to see
Whatever
something
it is.
that's unambiguously anomalous, meaning it was something that's you can't, it doesn't really have any other explanation. And that would be something that is actually moving in a way that can't be explained with current technology. Because that's really the first step, is to establish that there's something that does something that we can't do. Yeah, maybe that's not even non-homoean intelligence, but it's the first step towards demonstrating that. Maybe it's something like new technology from people. And the best way of doing that would be to have multiple videos of the same event so that you can triangulate the motion of the object. And that would go a long way to convincing me. And perhaps like high quality radar data, especially from two sources of the same event, or radar plus video. So, corroborated data of an event from multiple data sources that shows something that's unambiguously anomalous. That's what I need to kind of take the first step on the ladder towards NHI.
Okay, the next question should be very quick. So let's say you see something in the sky. What are some of the websites and sources that you can go to that you can kind of see if there's helicopters were operating at a specific date and time in a particular place?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of them. I use Flight Radar 24, which is a pretty straightforward one to use, and they have an iPhone app, a phone app. There's planefinder.net, which is similar. And then there's one called ADSB Exchange, which is a little fiddlier to use, but it's a bit more powerful. It often has flights that don't exist on the other ones. All of them you can kind of go back in time, but you can always use it in the moment to look at things. And some of them have what they call an AR version, augmented reality, where you can just hold your phone up and look, and it will tell you which planes are actually there in the sky.
All of these are apps? All those sources are apps you can
the Flight Radar 24 and planefinder.net are both apps, and ADSB Exchange, I think, is just a website. But, you could technically use it on your phone, but I think Flight Radar 24 usually if I want to see what a plane actually is in the sky. You can also look at, on your computer, you get the top-down map with all the planes. That's a little bit sometimes misleading because often people think a plane is a lot closer than it is. So you have to be very careful here. The best way to do it really is to use these phone apps and just, point it towards the plane, and it'll tell you what it actually is, and then look at it on the map and see how far away it is. And you'll be surprised. They're usually like at least 10 miles away, and sometimes more, like 40 or 50 miles away.
All right, Mick, I think we're like 4 minutes over. So I appreciate your generous use of time, and I hope folks at least got your side of the story so that they can make their own decisions on.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. It's been very interesting, and I'm very open to feedback from people. If people want to talk to me, send me an email, mick@mickwest.com, or I'm on Twitter @mickwest.
Thank you very much, Mick, and talk soon.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support, because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of a expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's two options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site. And there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much and keep watching. I really appreciate it.